how much can they steal? How much can they cheat? How much can they rob?
Welcome to the Andrea Giovino show. I want to thank all the subscribers. Thank you all the comments that you leave and the thumbs up. Continue to subscribe to my channel. You could also follow me on Instagram at Andrea Giovino. We are very consistent with putting out content every week, so continue to watch. We have a lot of good stuff coming out. We have Toby back, Toby TNT. He's also on Instagram at Toby TNT and Toby TNT1. And he'll be conversation with me. Today we're going to talk about, hey Toby.
How's it going? So we're going to talk about...
Today I want to talk about, which I knew personally, Jackie D'Amico, which they call Jackie Knows. My first interaction with Jackie, I hadn't known him, and I was living in Brooklyn on 85th Street and 20th Avenue. I was like 22 at the time, and I just had broken up with Frankie Lino, and about 22, 23. And my girlfriend Sylvia, which was a beautiful, beautiful Cuban girl, I met through another friend of mine. She was having some problems with her boyfriend, which was living in Manhattan, and my friend John Monty knew her, and he said, let me ask my friend Andy, because that's what they call me, let me ask Andy, she's got an extra bedroom, maybe you can go in and stay with her. So he called me up and he says, I can vouch for her, blah, blah, blah. She's really nice. She's struggling. She's having some problems with the boyfriend and all of that. And I was like, okay. I had no idea who her boyfriend was. I knew nothing of who her boyfriend was. So, or anything about him. So I was like, okay, we hit it off. I went out to dinner with them. I met her. She was very nice. She, was good with you. She knew I had a kid and all of that. You were like 5 at the time. And she came and stayed with me. And then she had said, my boyfriend, we're having problems, and I, of course, I asked her, I was like, well, what are the problems you have? And she was like, he's really, really good to me. He's very generous with me, but I just can't deal with the fact that he's married. And I was like, oh, okay. What does he do? What does he do for a living? And she's like, well, he's a street guy. Now, I was comfortable with that because I had just been with Frankie Lino, and I know, and my background and all of that. So I was like, oh, okay. I said, what's his name? She said, Jackie. I says, oh, okay. I still don't know him. She says, he's from Mulberry Street. He's from the city. Okay. So with this, I hear them on the phone all the time. Now, back then, they didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So he used to call the landline, my number. So she comes to me one day and she says to me, Jackie's coming up from the city, he wants to take us to dinner. He wants to meet you and everything. And he wanted me to ask you, can he use your telephone to come up to the apartment and use your phone, right? Because he probably didn't want, because back in the day, they also had the street phones you can call up on the corner.
Yes.
Okay. So he said he was going to use the corner phone, and could he use the landline? She goes, and he said he'd take care of you. So I was like, sure. What do I care, right? Comes. Now, Sylvia, like I said, I was like 22, 23. She was like 28. Beautiful, thick black hair, cocoa skin, gorgeous. She was gorgeous. No makeup, just beautiful. A beautiful figure, beautiful girl. I meet him. Jackie Knows. This is Jackie the Nose D'Amico, which is a captain in the Gambino crime family. Now, at this point, I didn't know who John Gotti was because this was before I met them, Gotti. Okay. I had actually met Jackie Knows before even them.
Okay.
So I meet him. He's like gentleman, dressed very polished, very handsome man. And he's like, hey, how are you? You were there. He talked to you. He says, hey, I think he might have gave you $20. Go get the kids something. So he says, goes to me, I want to ask you something. I says, yeah, what is it? Now, at this point, we were coming back from the restaurant outside my apartment. He goes, I wanted to ask you, am I able to go up, where I could use your phone and, I could have like a little privacy for about a half hour, an hour, meaning like me and Sylvia don't go up. So I was like, sure. Toby, he hands me $500. You know what $500 was back then?
It's a lot of money. Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I'll never forget that. He gave me $500. I was like, anytime. Anytime.
So $500 back then, I would say, is probably like several $1,000s now.
$500
to use your phone for a half hour, an hour.
Yes, he $500 to use my phone. We left, and across the street from where I lived, it was called Bohack. It was a supermarket. Mm-hmm. So I was like, Sylvia, great, let's go get all groceries and everything, so we have everything in the house that we need. And she goes, don't worry, he's good. He gives a lot, like he's a spender.
Okay.
She goes, he's really a big spender. And I was like, okay, great. So, he was seeing her, picking her up because she's staying in Brooklyn now. But they were having these estranged problems because, like I said, he was married and she was going out with him. Mm-hmm. He was going to get her own place in whatever she wanted, but she was pushing more toward a serious relationship, and he wasn't going to go there. He wasn't going to leave his wife.
Sure.
He wasn't doing that. So, and I always say...
And those guys rarely ever leave their wife.
They rarely leave the wife, unless the wife leaves them. Yeah. They're never leaving the wife. They're never leaving their family. They just don't do that, And a lot of the wives stay and turn a blind eye to what he's doing, because a lot of them know. They all know. These guys are out 24/7. Yeah. They're out at night all the time. They're polished. They're dressed beautiful. I mean... I'm sure he was making a ton of money back then, because to give me $500, I only had, a good experience with him because he was so good to her. Yeah. In that way. And then I remember they broke up permanently. She just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And there I was like, oh God, now I'm not getting my $500 anymore. Oh God. So that was my interaction with him on a couple of months as she was with me. He was coming using, the phone, throwing me the money, and which was very nice. Getting out of New York and even using the, like I said, downstairs phones outside, away from, I think out of all those men, and even in that era, because Jackie didn't do a lot of prison time. Jackie was pretty smart. He always was doing that, getting out of New York, coming into Brooklyn, using a strange woman's telephone, going to the phone booth on the corner. I had no idea what he was talking about because I wasn't there.
Now, he was a high-level guy. I know you didn't meet John Gotti yet at that point in time, but he was a high-level
He was a captain in the Gambino family.
Close to John Gotti himself.
Yes, I think he became a captain after the fact. Like, he was definitely a Gambino associate when I knew him, because I believe he became a captain when Gotti became the boss, because he was very close to John Gotti. He was one of the
I think
a confidant.
I got to do a little research on him. I think he might have been a captain prior to that, but that's irrelevant. But go ahead, I'll listen. I'm going to see if I can look that up.
I'm not quite sure. It's like, I say all the time.
I was young at that point in time.
But I say all the time is that a lot of these guys I knew as friends. I did not have any illegal interaction with them. Like, people try to discredit me or say, oh, she was saying she was involved with them or I never was involved illegally with any of them. I was friends with them. We all came up in that era, in that same era, in that age group. This was the circle of people that I stayed with. This was the circle of men I was comfortable with, especially having the knowledge of being with Frank Lino prior to meeting him, and then knowing many of them from the streets and where I came from. I knew a lot of these guys, and they all knew me. Everybody knew me. So when people say, oh, we never heard of course, these guys that are much younger than me had never heard of me, because you're in your 40s and 50s. You could be my kid. Yeah. I might look good for my age, but I'm in that age group, in that era. Sure. So I don't know, and I can't even compare what's out there today what's even been out there 10 years ago compared to the era I came from. The era I came from were true, hardcore gangsters. Mafia. That was mafia. That was Cosa Nostra. That was street guys. Those were mobsters. Not what I see today. Not what I see today. Yeah. And back then, unheard of to cooperate. Just unheard of. It was just unheard of. You just would never cooperate.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you can't compare when even today, when they say, and I don't judge anybody for cooperating, so don't get me wrong. I could care less what you do because you don't know what you're going to do until you're in that person's shoes. And if somebody's facing, life or 30 years in prison, and I'm on that case, you bet your ass you're going to worry about yourself, then I'm going to worry about you. You know what I mean? Each person's going to worry about themselves and what they're going to do for themselves. Should they cooperate? It's not my place to say what they should do. I don't know what goes on in a person's. I just could understand the fear that comes along with that. The fear that comes along when you get a guy, let's say they're in their 30s or 40s, and let's say some of them have families, and you're telling them they're going to get 30 years.
Here's the thing. And I said this before. I said this in another podcast with you. Here's the thing. You're talking about guys that they're robbing, stealing, cheating.
But that's street crime, Toby.
Killing.
Okay, but that's mafia.
In certain instances, they're murdering their best friends.
Okay, yes.
The reason why they're not loyal when it comes to getting locked up is because they're willing to kill their best friend on an order. They're willing to go rob somebody that they may know.
But that's
they're not being loyal when they get locked up.
No, they're not going to.
Some of them are. Some of these guys are real gangsters to the core. Mm-hmm. They took an oath. They believe in it.
And I know some of them.
They were raised that way. They believe in it. Most guys that are doing stuff for self-gain, self-benefit, it's all about them. How much can they steal? How much can they cheat? How much can they rob? If they kill this particular person, how much can they get for murdering that person? Or how much could they rob that person for?
How much could they benefit?
When they do kill him, how much could they benefit? When they get locked up, that same personality type is benefiting themselves.
Yeah, but that's what it is.
That's why there's not stand-up guys. They're not taking an oath into the military or into something that stands for the greater good of mankind. They're taking an oath into crime to better their own personal self. Mm-hmm. So now when it comes down to their own personal self, or the next guy that is willing to kill somebody or kill his best friend or whatever, he's not going to have your back.
No.
So that's the reason why a lot of these particular guys end up cooperating, because that loyalty is not there when they're facing a life sentence.
No, it's not there. When they made the RICO law, that's when it all started, when people started. Well, when Sammy started. I always say when Sammy opened the gates of heaven, everybody started running through the gates.
I wouldn't say Sammy. I don't think Sammy's capable of opening the gates of heaven.
No.
Let me correct you on that. Okay?
I mean, the flood started.
Sammy cooperated, and then there was a trail of people that cooperated behind him.
Well, because you got an underboss that did it. Why wouldn't they?
He wasn't the first, though. There was other big names. He was one of the most high profile.
Yeah. There were other people. Yeah, back. When you talk about Joe Valachi.
He was the biggest he was probably the most high profile guy
in that era
because of John Gotti. Because he cooperated and he put against John Gotti.
And they wanted John Gotti.
And John Gotti was one of the most high profile criminals in the history of the mafia.
Compared to an Al Capone.
Al Capone.
Yeah. I mean, so John Gotti, and when Sammy did that. But today, the in thing is like, it's not looked even down upon to cooperate because they hit them with...
You're wrong about that.
I don't know.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. It depends on who.
Yeah, it depends
on who. But there's people that'll say they'll never rat.
Right.
And they pretend to be gangster to the core.
Right.
But once they're facing that life sentence, it's a whole nother animal.
I know.
And you know, that's the hypocritical part of this whole thing, because, you know, there are people that act, live, and pretend to be gangster to the core until they're facing the 20, 30, 40, 50 years or a life sentence.
Right.
It's a whole nother animal.
Yes.
I mean, you notice, you've seen this how many times?
I've seen it. And I don't judge. I don't. It's not my place to judge who's going to do what. It's none of my business. I don't know what you're going through, you know, when you actually are faced with that. Because I have friends.
I like to say what I say, though. So we are doing a podcast,
right?
And I like to say what I say because I know people are watching.
Yes.
And I like to put out, this is the reality. And this is the reality that we have seen over and over and over again with all different types of people and some of the hardest criminals, the hardest killers. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have been around them.
Yes.
We've been around them. And, you know.
In my family.
You know, and that's the reality at the end of the day.
Well, the reality at the end of the day is jail for life.
Dead or in prison.
Dead or in prison, yeah. It's either dead or in prison. I mean, for the people that were close to me, like my family or my husband or whatever, is that it's either that you're going to prison for life or you're dead. So, you know, when you throw life at people and you tell them they're facing 20 to life, or, you know, that's a lot for somebody to swallow. That really is a lot for someone to swallow. I mean, when they came up with these, you know, laws, that's why so many of them started You got young guys that are going to be doing life. I mean, look at Mark Ryder. I mean, there's so many of them that are still in that I know. That never. Look at George Martorano, my good friend. 33 years. He just got out. He's an older man. I mean, Mark Ryder's still fighting to get out. You know, so it's very, very hard. And then you have these young guys. The point I was getting at, though, let's take cooperation out of it. Let's not even bring that into it. I'm saying just how the mob or organized crime is run today is not run the way it was years ago. And just many differences. They looked like distinguished businessmen. They would not walk out the door without dressing to the nines. The suits, the ties, the shoes. They looked meticulous.
Other than Sylvia, did you have much more dealings with Jackie the Nose? I know you were around Gotti quite a bit. Did you?
Oh, later on.
Yeah,
I met Jackie
on.
again. Oh, yeah. That was a good question. Yes, later on. Actually, I believe Jackie Nose was one of the guys because Ali Shades and Margot and a bunch of his crew were in the lower level of the bar of Club A. Like you go down steps and there was another bar. There's a bar area down there. And we were up at the dais, and that was the night I had the fight with the girl. And I believe Jackie Nose was there also. Or Nunzio. It was Gotti, Jackie. So Jackie knew me, yes, because he was going out with my girlfriend Sylvia.
Okay.
But what happened with Sylvia, which is very sad, which I want to bring out, she got herself caught up back then, and it was very sad because, like I said, she was a gorgeous girl. I mean, on a scale from 1 to 10, a 10. I mean, people would just she was beautiful. She wound up dying from an overdose, you know, from drugs.
Yeah.
And that was very sad. She just had one bad run after another with these types of guys and just kept going downhill. And then I heard she got caught up with, because then, of course, she started taking pills and all. And back then it was called Quaaludes. And I wasn't having that around you. That's when I told her we had to part.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's why he was distancing himself from her also. I never brought it up to him because I just felt that was like a no-no, you know, because you have to know your place also. And she started with the pills and the Quaalude, and I was just like, Sylvia, this ain't going to work for me. You're going to have to find another place to stay. And she did find somebody else that was doing pills with her, and she went off. And then I found out about a year later she OD'd. She went, young. So that happened with her. But yes, I did, to answer your question, yes, I did actually interact with him more. So I was.
So the reason why we started
out, around these guys a lot.
We started out with him because, you know, at some point he wasn't just a captain. At some point he became a very powerful captain.
Oh yeah.
That was part of I guess a committee at some point.
Yes, and there are going to be some more stories for my guests to know of much more high level organized crime guys that I was around. Great stories that stood up for me when I had a problem with somebody owing me a lot of money, and went to bat for me. So, but we'll get into that on another segment. With it's another character in the mob genre, high profile. But Jackie knows, yes. These are the kind of people I grew up around, I had been around, and then continued to be around until, the demise came down on all of us.
Okay.
So thank you. Thanks, Toby, always coming in and, partnering up with me and talking and stuff like that. Thank you, my subscribers. Subscribe to Andrea Giovino 1. I'm on Instagram. Press the like button, leave comments. And thank you, Jesus. And we will see you next time, and guaranteed you'll be entertained.
Don't forget at Toby TNT and the number 1, and follow her on YouTube as well at Andrea Giovino, the number 1.
Thank you. Bye.